Hello, I'm Julia Weston, Chief Executive of the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust. We run the Churchill Fellowship Programme, which is an annual programme of grants that funds UK citizens to travel the world in search of practical solutions for today's key challenges. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity today, together with Debra, Emma and Kelly, to tell you a bit about the fellowships and how they work. Essentially, a Churchill Fellowship enables you to travel for 4 to 8 weeks anywhere in the world, researching a topic of your choice amongst the global experts in your field. And every year we award up to 150 of these fellowships. You can visit successful projects, meet leading practitioners in your chosen field across the globe, and then when you come home, we'll support you to share your new ideas and affect change in your community or across your profession in the UK. These aren't academic research grants, they're practical inquiries into real-world issues that fellows have encountered in their daily lives. And we fund across 8 universal themes, which are the arts, communities, economy and enterprise, education and skills, the environment, health and well-being, governance and public provision, and science and technology. So there should be something for everyone. Any UK adult citizen can apply, regardless of qualifications, age, or background. You do have to be over 18, but there's no upper age limit, so it's never too late to apply for a Churchill Fellowship. And fellows aren't selected for their past achievements or their past track record, but rather for the power of their ideas and their potential to make change happen. This year, obviously, we've had to pause the grants because of the pandemic, but we will be open just as soon as the virus allows. And if you'd like to find out more, please head to our website, which is wcmt.org.uk. Here you can learn more, but also you can sign up to receive an alert for when we reopen for applications. In the meantime, I'm really pleased to be part of today's event, which has been organised entirely by Churchill Fellows working in or with the criminal justice sector. It's such a good example of the ideas and insights and, most importantly, people that the fellowship has to offer. I'm going to spend about 30 minutes talking to 3 Churchill Fellows, and they are Debra Carr, who's a Fellow of 2012, who looked at forensic textile science, and Kelly, Sheridan and Emma Tilley, who were both awarded their fellowships in February this year and then promptly grounded by coronavirus. As soon as she can, Kelly will be travelling to Australia, Belgium, Singapore and Sweden to look at the effective use of textile fibre databases in forensic science. And Emma is planning to go to Canada to identify best practice around support for bereaved families following police-related deaths. Once we've had our chat, there will be time for questions to the fellows afterwards. So Debra, can I turn to you first? Can you tell us where you went on your fellowship in 2012 and what you learned?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was very lucky. I went to Australia and New Zealand. I spent time with people in universities, military personnel, forensics practitioners in the police in both countries. And what I learned about was how those various practitioners handle textiles with relevance to textile damage, but also how do they analyse it. I was also able to conduct some of my own research, particularly in New Zealand. 2 main topics. First of all, ripped fabrics with reference to alleged sexual assault, and secondly, ballistic impacts on fabrics.
So really interesting, really important areas. So you did your travels and then came back to the UK with lots of new ideas and learning. What did you do with all of those ideas? Where did you take them?
At the time, I was working in a university, so the first thing I did was I wrote a couple of papers, one on each topic area for the research that I conducted. I gave a number of local community-based presentations. Lots of people in my local community were very interested. We filled the church village hall at one Sunday and went for a lovely Sunday lunch afterwards. I also gave a series of lectures in forensics departments across the United Kingdom at various universities, and I still do some of that even all this time later. And lastly, but not leastly, and probably most importantly, I incorporated what I'd learned into my own teaching practices.
Okay, so would you say the fellowship has had a dual impact then on you as a person, and also on your sector and the way the work's conducted.
Absolutely, I think, particularly within the universities. I have a textiles background. I'm not a forensics practitioner, so I partnered with forensics practitioners and brought textile science practice into forensics. So I think that was very important. But I also learned about forensics and some of the challenges there as well. And from a personal perspective, it was all about the relationships I made. People were so generous with their time and with their knowledge, and really led to a series of lifelong relationships and collaborative partnerships as well.
So yeah, that sounds fantastic. Were there any challenges that you faced?
I was quite lucky in that I either already knew or was in contact with most of the people I wanted to go and visit, or I knew somebody in the organisation where they were, so they were able to put me in contact with the correct person. I think the biggest challenge actually was to try and put some relaxation in there as well, not just to rush madly around Australia and New Zealand between different appointments, to put some rest time in so as I could reflect on the information that I'd received. So I think for me that was the biggest challenge.
That's interesting. That's something we hear a lot from fellows, that you want to make the most of every moment, and then you forget to factor in that reflection time. Thank you, Deborah. Kelly and Emma, coming to you. Obviously, you haven't been able to travel yet because of the pandemic, but it would be great to hear an idea of what questions you'll be exploring when you travel. Kelly, would you like to go first? So yes. What are you going to be exploring, and what projects are you going to be visiting?
So as you said at the beginning, the topic that I'm interested in is the effective use of textile fibre databases in criminal cases. And that's because fibre evidence is being used in the UK to solve some of the most difficult crimes. But actually, in terms of any reliable databases that we can use to make the science more robust and use it for intelligence purposes is non-existent. Other countries have used them to their advantage. One of the biggest recent examples is a 20-year-old case that has been solved in Australia through the compilation of a textile fibre database. So it demonstrates how useful they can be. And so specifically what I'm going to be interested in is how they compile the database, what information they use to create that database, and also around sharing. In the UK specifically, forensic providers are now private, and any database that needs to be used in the UK needs to be fair across the board and accessible to everybody. So I'm going to be investigating also how the data can be shared, and then how it's used in court. So there's some questions about admissibility into court and how that intelligence information can be used in an evaluative way. So the project is really quite a big one with many questions to ask.
Yes, it sounds like it. And so when you come back to the UK, having hopefully answered all these questions, who will you be talking to then? Who are you looking to influence, or where will these ideas and these answers go?
Luckily, having a practitioner background, I have a lot of contacts within the forensic science industry, and so I will be looking initially to compile my recommendations from my travels and findings together, and to put that forward to those key stakeholders within the forensic community, whether that be forensic providers or the Association for Forensic Science Providers, the forensic regulator, and of course further that to develop my own research in that area and disseminate that, as Debra mentioned she done through teaching.
Right. So just thinking about the fellowship as a whole, what's the most exciting thing for you about the fellowship, about having been awarded the fellowship?
I think initially it was just the confidence in me and my ideas that the fellowship put in me to be able to take them on and explore them. And it's very rare that you will get up to 8 weeks travel as a period together to gain all of that information in one block. I think it will make a real difference rather than trying to perform a piece of research where you're picking it up and putting it down all the time. And so being able to go to multiple countries and really get hands-on experience and in-depth discussions and chats with people, I think, is what will make the difference.
Yeah. Well, let's hope you can go soon. Emma, coming to you. We've heard from two fellows looking at textiles and forensic science. Can you give us a flavour of what you'll be investigating when you can travel? And also what projects have caught your interest in Canada?
Okay, yeah, sure. So my fellowship will focus on what support is offered to bereaved families following police-related deaths, particularly in Canada. So really I'll be looking into what those support mechanisms are, how those mechanisms are funded, how they're evaluated, how feedback is gathered from families, because there are a number of projects that are really interesting to me that are taking place in Canada that we don't currently have here in the UK. So they are things such as support groups that are 24/7 accessible for families who have been bereaved following a police-related death. That can be things such as fatal police shootings, fatal police pursuits, deaths in custody, etc. So this idea of support groups whereby families can lean on each other when going through these really complicated legal proceedings and inquests, etc. That idea is really interesting to me and something that I'd like to inquire more about in terms of bringing that idea back to the UK. There's also various other mechanisms that are really interesting in Canada around things such as support, financial support funds that are immediately available to families in such circumstances in which they can access counselling. So straight away, families can access things like counselling to support them through that process of grief, and that complicated grief that takes place following a death in which the state is involved in some way.
And yeah, it's a really, really important, another really important area. And are you confident that when you come back, there is going to be interest in what in your ideas, and that they will be taken up and implemented?
Yes, I think there are a variety of networks within government now. For example, roles such as the victim commissioner, roles such as the justice secretary, all of those roles and responsibilities I'd be looking to tap into. There's also Inquest, which is a charity that supports families affected by state-related deaths, police, but also health and prisons and probation as well. And Inquest has a family reference group that I'd be looking to get in contact with and work together with in order to make those changes following the research trip. So although this is something that affects only around 218 families per year in the UK, it is something that I believe is absolutely important and integral for us to focus on in terms of creating some positive change and ensuring that families who find themselves in those circumstances can access support that's tailored to their situation.
Absolutely. And do you have, is there anything that you're concerned about around the travels, around when you come back, around the sort of the bigger fellowship piece?
I think at the moment, in terms of concerns, it really my only concern is the global pandemic, really, and just wondering when international travel will be available again. So I'm just hopeful that the kind of advances that we're hearing about in the news and things will allow myself and Kelly, of course, to proceed with our plans, you know, in the near future, really.
Yes, I think we're all hoping for that, like mad. Thank you, Emma. Debra, coming back to you, do you feel a bit of envy listening to Emma and Kelly's hopes for their fellowship travels? Just looking back on yours again.
I really do. It's one of the things I love about the trust is when you come back, the opportunity to connect with your local organisations. And it's that fellowship that fellows have within the UK and overseas, of course, after their fellowship. It's great to chat to people about what they did, but also to new fellows like Kelly and Emma about what their plans are and how exciting they are. It just really just keeps you interested, you know, moving forward. So yes, I do have a little bit of envy, I have to say, but I don't envy them what they've had to cope with this year.
Yes.
With, you know, putting all the plans on hold. That would be quite difficult logistically, I think.
Yes, I think it has been a very challenging year in many respects, and not least for our newly awarded fellows. Just if I can just take you back again, Debra, to I suppose the beginning of your fellowship, but also seeing it as a fellowship for life, which is what we say it is. Is there anything in particular that's been a surprise to you? If you think about your expectations when you first applied, is there anything that's been surprising for you?
I guess there are three things. I mean, two I've already really mentioned, and that was just how generous people were. They were so excited to have a fellow come. I hadn't realised the reach that the trust has across the world. Also the continuing relationships and collaborations. And I think finally, the most surprising thing for me was this 5 years later. When I was in both Australia and in New Zealand, people suggested to me that I should write a book. I'd never considered that. I didn't think that people would be interested in my work. But it was suggested that I should do that, and 5 years later the book came about. So that was probably the biggest surprise, to be honest with you, and that people are still interested in what I did. So many years later I still get invited to go and talk about what I did, and it's a great opportunity obviously to talk about the trust as well.
Thank you, Debra. So really stretching what you think you're capable of as an individual as well.
Oh, absolutely, definitely.
Yeah. So in that case, shall we turn to some advice for anyone who is thinking about applying for a fellowship? Emma, if I could start with you. If anyone is interested, can you give us a bit of background about how you found the application process?
Yeah, so I think for myself, with the application process, the key for me was ensuring that I had a real knowledge about past fellows, the kind of themes that fellows undertake, and the approaches undertaken by fellows. I also got in touch with some fellows, finding them through LinkedIn or other social media platforms, just to ask for their kind of top tips around what would you suggest for somebody who's interested in applying. And a lot of the tips are around to ensure that your idea that you've got, you know, you've thought it through, you've considered the key challenges, you've considered your objectives, and you've really gave a lot of time to the research ahead of making your application. So that's what I ensured that I did.
And did you get a good response from other fellows who you tracked down through social media to ask advice from?
Yeah, absolutely. The fellows that I spoke to were really, really helpful, offered phone calls, offered to take a look over drafts of kind of my ideas, and that for me was just really so valuable, and I'm really grateful to the support from those past fellows.
Oh, great, thank you, Emma. Kelly, just coming over to you now. One of the things that's can be a challenge is our application form is very short, and so a lot of fellows tell us it's quite difficult to get all your ideas into that application form. How did you manage that, and how did you go about your planning process?
My absolute number one top tip is to read the information, and when it says 1,000 characters, that includes everything, including spaces, and not to write 1,000 words and then realize it doesn't fit into the box. So yes, I learned from experience about the very short form. But actually, I found the process really useful, because going through the questions, it really refines your idea, and it challenges you to think about what it is you are trying to achieve and how you can achieve it. And so although the form is short, I think as a result of that, my idea was a much better and more manageable and workable idea, having been through the process.
Well, that's good to hear. Did you know any previous fellows or any existing fellows?
Yes, I did, and the same as Emma, I reached out to them and had the same fantastic help and support from all of them, including some of the fellows that have been instrumental in the setup of today. And I think actually knowing them and seeing their successes certainly encouraged me anyway to apply. You know, as you said right at the start, it's not necessarily about your past achievements or how long your list is of grant awards or publications, but actually coming from practice and knowing that your ideas is going to make a real difference. And it's so refreshing seeing those people being believed in and having the opportunity to take out that project into looking into their own ideas. So it was really them who gave me the umption to go for it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both so much, and Debra as well. We've got everything crossed, Emma and Kelly, that you will be travelling soon. I really do hope that will be the case. And once you are travelling, we will obviously be here, as will the whole fellowship, to support you on your travels and once you come back. And just final mention of our website for anyone who is interested. The address is wcmt.org.uk. And can I finish by thanking the organisers of today's conference for giving us time to talk about the Churchill Fellowships. I really appreciate it. And in particular, huge thanks to Debra, Kelly and Emma for sharing your experiences and your hopes. Fingers crossed, those are going to come true soon. Thank you to everyone who's listening in. I hope what you've heard has piqued your interest in the fellowships and that you are now considering applying and recommending others to do so too. I'll now wish you all a very good conference and hand over for questions. Thank you.